The Anunnaki, the Sumerians, the greatest civilization. They won't tell you this in school. Before the pyramids appeared, before Greece began to philosophize, before Rome began its conquests, they existed. A civilization that official history mentions sparingly, and school textbooks almost ignore. But it was they who gave us writing, mathematics, astronomy, the first cities, the first laws. And, most importantly, a mystery that still excites the imagination of researchers and seekers of truth. These are the Sumerians. And their gods, the Anunnaki, who created the first tables, where the stars, the cycles of the moon, the names of rulers who supposedly lived thousands of years before the flood are recorded. Where did they get their knowledge about Jupiter, Pluto, and the orbits of the planets without a telescope? And who were the Anunnaki? Myth? Gods? Or guests from heaven, as the Sumerians themselves wrote? This video is not about legends. This is a story that did not make it into the school curriculum, because it is too inconvenient, too old, and too accurate. Stay until the end, because perhaps this is where you will find an explanation of what the beginning of humanity really means. Who are the Sumerians, and how did they come about? The oldest civilization that has left behind more questions than answers. The Sumerians are not just the first people to create writing. They are a people who appeared suddenly as a fully formed society, without a wild period, without gradual development. This is what surprises historians. There is no long path from the original settlement to civilization. There are immediately cities, laws, a temple system, trade, writing. They appeared in history around 4000 BC. In the southern part of Mesopotamia, modern southern Iraq. But where they came from is unknown. Their language is unlike any other in the surrounding region. It does not belong to the Semitic, Indo-European, or even Hittite groups. It is an isolated language system. Their writing style, cuneiform, appeared suddenly and immediately mature, as a complete system of communication, without going through obvious stages of evolution. The Sumerians were the first to build urbanized city-states. Ur, Uruk, Lagash, Nippur. Each of them had a central temple, a ziggurat, dedicated to its god. But even here, not everything is simple. All cities mention the Anunnaki, a group of beings who descended from heaven and gave people knowledge, power, and established order. The Sumerians knew astronomy with amazing accuracy. They knew about the movement of the moon, calculated the length of the year, and described planets that are not visible to the naked eye. The tablets even mention celestial bodies that modern science discovered only in the 20th century. They used a sexagesimal system of calculation, which still lives in our time format: 60 seconds, 60 minutes, 360 degrees in a circle. They developed civil law, economics, and a judicial system. Their laws were preserved on clay tablets, sections on inheritance, divorce, and compensation. The first stock exchanges, accounts, and systems of weights and measures. This is not a primitive culture. It is a full-fledged administrative system that has worked for thousands of years. But why don't we hear about the Sumerians in the school curriculum? Perhaps because the Sumerians are too precise, too ancient, and too inconvenient. Their king lists contain the names of rulers who ruled for several thousand years. Their texts openly state that their knowledge was given to them by those who came from heaven, beings who descended in fire, created man, and left. Their god Enki is not a disembodied spirit, but a physical entity who lived in a special place described with geographical precision. His brother Enlil is the lord of the atmosphere, and En is the lord of the sky. They are described not as symbols, but as beings with intentions, emotions, and technology. Were they gods, or something else? Perhaps the answer is not religion. It is that the Sumerians simply recorded what they saw, and that is why they are so difficult to fit into the framework of modern history. Anunnaki, those who descended from the sky, a myth or something more. Who were those whom the Sumerians called their creators? The word Anunnaki in Sumerian texts literally means those who descended from the sky to earth. They are not abstract gods, not personifications of nature, as in Greek mythology. These are concrete beings, with names, statuses, conflicts, responsibilities. They had power, technology, and according to the Sumerians themselves, created man. The Sumerian epic Atrahasis and other cuneiform texts say, the Anunnaki were tired of working. They gathered a council. Enki gave them advice to create a man who would take on the work of the gods. According to legend, they mixed clay with the blood of the god, creating a being capable of thinking, working, and worshipping. The Sumerians did not consider themselves simply born. They openly wrote, "Man is an artificial creation, created not by nature, but by the will of a higher civilization." Among the Anunnaki, the main figures stand out. Enki is the god of water, knowledge, wisdom. It was he, according to Sumerian sources, who created man. He was considered benevolent, the one who taught people crafts, writing, and astronomy. Enlil is the lord of the air and atmosphere. He often conflicted with Enki, advocated control over humanity, and initiated punishments, in particular the flood. An is the supreme heavenly lord. His home is not on earth, but in the heavenly kingdom. It was from there that others descended. Inanna Ishtar is the goddess of love, war, and technology. She is described as the one who descended in a metal ship, noisy as a storm. One of the texts contains a description that is literally stunning. The Anunnaki descended in fire-breathing ships from the sky. The earth trembled, the dust rose, the day became night. People fell to their knees. This is not an image of poetry. This is a description of the landing of something extraordinary. Cuneiform tablets often depict figures with bags, watches on their wrists, a star-studded sky map, and even a planetary system with an extra planet, which some researchers call Nibiru, the likely place of origin of the Anunnaki. And now the main question: did the Sumerians really believe that they were taught by extraterrestrial beings? Official science calls this a myth. But then why are these myths? Accurately describe the orbits of the planets? Contain knowledge about gravity and mathematics? Do they indicate a cyclical pattern of floods that matches geological data? The Anunnaki do not demand faith. They are encrypted in tablets, stored in museums, and leave us with a puzzle. Either the Sumerians were brilliant inventors, or they really saw more than we are willing to admit. Sumerian knowledge, science that was not supposed to know. And how is it possible that a Stone Age civilization knew more than a modern school? The Sumerians did not just observe the stars, they understood the structure of the universe. They knew that the Earth is a rotating ball. They divided the sky into 12 zodiac constellations, created a sexagesimal number system, which still lives in hours, minutes, and degrees. They knew exactly the length of the year, 365 days, 6 hours, 13 minutes, and 33 seconds. The error, only a few seconds from today's satellite calculations. Sumerian astronomers described Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and even Uranus and Neptune. But how? Uranus is not visible to the naked eye. Neptune was discovered only in the 19th century. However, the Sumerian tablets contain accurate data on their characteristics and orbits. Even more mysterious is the mention of the 12th planet, which the Sumerians called Nibiru, those who pass by. It appears in the epic Enuma Elish as a celestial body with a long, elongated orbit, bringing with it changes in the geology of the Earth. Was it a fantasy, or is the memory of an astronomical catastrophe being passed down? Geography and mathematics are no less impressive. They measured the land, built irrigation systems with an accuracy of a degree, and used trigonometry long before the Greeks. The first tables of squares, cubes, and fractions, all this was found in Uruk, Lagash, and Nippur. The Sumerians even knew the principle of the Pythagorean theorem, but 1,500 years before Pythagoras. And now, the most mysterious, the Sumerian king list. This is a tablet that lists rulers and indicates not just their names, but the duration of their reigns. After the kingdom descended from heaven, the kings lived in Eris, the first dynasty, 8 kings. They ruled for 241,200 years. Then the flood, and after it a new era with much shorter terms of rule. This is not a mistake. This is an official state archive. Why did the Sumerians believe that before the flood, semi-divine kings ruled with a lifespan of tens of thousands of years? Are these symbols or a reference to a completely different era? And one more fact that did not make it into school textbooks. The Sumerians described the DNA system figuratively but surprisingly accurately. Their texts say that man was created from a mixture of divine blood and clay, with the breath of life through a special procedure. These are not just myths. This is science in a veiled form. Or, 1. The Sumerians were incredible geniuses at the level of the 21st century. 2. Or they received this knowledge from someone who already had such technology. Where did the Sumerians go, and what do we still not understand? A civilization that gave humanity everything, and suddenly disappeared. Why? The Sumerians were not destroyed by war. Their cities were not burned. Their culture was not suddenly erased. On the contrary, everything looked as if they simply left. In the 2nd millennium BC, their language was gradually supplanted by Akkadian. The cities were emptied. The ziggurats fell into disrepair. History returned to them only 4,000 years later, when in the middle of the 19th century, archaeologists excavated Uruk, Ur, and Nippur. But the question is, why did a people who knew more than everyone around them disappear? There are several hypotheses. The first is an ecological catastrophe. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which fed the cities, gradually changed their channels. The irrigation system, on which all agriculture was based, began to collapse. The land became salty, crops failed. People left the cities, not because they wanted to, but because they could no longer survive. The second is the invasion of other peoples. The Amorites, and later the Elamites and Kassites, invaded the region. But even they did not destroy the Sumerians, but adopted their culture. Even the giant Babylon is, in fact, a grandson of the Sumerian Uruk. Their gods, the system of laws, even the calendar, all this is Sumerian roots in new forms. The third is metaphysical. Sumerian texts mention that the gods left the earth, and then the order fell like a house of clay. That is, when the Anunnaki completed their mission, civilization lost its core. Perhaps the loss of the guiding center led to a gradual decline. People remembered knowledge, but could not restore it. The fourth is conspiratorial. Some researchers believe that the Sumerians did not disappear, but were deliberately erased from historical consciousness. Their tablets, tens of thousands, are scattered throughout museums around the world. Many of them have not yet been translated. Their language is still not fully understood. Why? Perhaps the answer is that some things humanity is not yet ready to know. But what is certain, the Sumerians never completely disappeared. Their ideas live on. Their words still lie in clay. Their maps are still accurate. And what they left behind is too profound to be considered just fiction. The Sumerians did not disappear. They simply wrote history and left it for us to translate. The question is different. Are we still reading it with our eyes, or are we finally ready to see it with our hearts? Subscribe if you feel that the truth is somewhere under a layer of dust and time. And leave a comment. Do you believe that the Anunnaki were really not of this world?